For generations now, the Fox kids of the 90s, the Disney kids of the 2000s, the Nickelodeon kids of the 2010s, and now the Netflix kids of the 2020s. Television shows have been a main source of entertainment and typically would come in two packages, cartoons and sitcoms. Now, various shows from both of those groups have defined people's childhoods. But what many people forget is that not all kids shows were cartoons or sitcoms. In between them, you had live action shows with the real life visuals of sitcoms and the explosive action of cartoons. It doesn't seem as though these types of shows were as defining as the other two, but there might be a reason for that. There is one show that has been mostly dominant within this genre. One show that has been airing for multiple generations of kids rather than just one or two. One show that has been as defining to as many childhoods as the cartoons and sitcoms that air alongside it. And that one show is Power Rangers. Having had such a fun concept from the very second it first hit the airwaves, the series became a financial marvel that was followed by many for years and years. People would make fun of it, sure, but the series was undeniably a titan for a television IP. But then, at some point in its run, the series dropped off, both in terms of show quality and popularity. Now you're probably wondering, when did this happen? Why did this happen? Has the show made a comeback? Can it make a comeback? To answer all of those questions, I present the history of the series in the rise and fall of Power Rangers. All the way back in 1975, a show named Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger hit the Japanese airwaves. It was a smash hit and would go on to be the first of the long-running Super Sentai series. Go Ranger marked the creation of the Sentai and Power Rangers concept, that being 5 people who take down monsters by transforming into color-coded superheroes. It was a very fun idea, so it's easy to see how it took off and became so successful in Japan. When Go Ranger expanded into the Super Sentai series, we would more or less just see the same idea soft reset every single installment, but with a new thematic twist on it. Those twists included animals, cars, birds, you name it. And the series continued to take off as well as evolve with things like the addition of giant robots every single season. Amidst the success, multiple attempts to bring the series over to America were made, particularly by one person named Saban. His idea was to replace the unsuited scenes for originally shot footage with American actors and an American storyline. Then the already existing suited fight scenes could be dubbed over and just go along with the original stuff. After multiple failed attempts in the span of almost a decade, a pilot shot using footage from Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, the 1992 dinosaur-themed Super Sentai series, got approval to be aired as a show on Fox Kids. As such, Saban turned his pilot into a full-length show. Now, Fox in the early 90s was arguably the most popular channel on television. So the large audience this show needed was there. The question was just, would it stick the landing with them? That question would be answered on August 28, 1993, when the show under the title Mighty Morphin Power Rangers premiered. To say the least, it was super popular with damn near all of the kids who watched Fox at the time. They hadn't seen anything like it before and as such started watching it avidly. On top of its already existing audience, word started to spread to kids who didn't usually watch Fox Kids, and they ended up loving the show too. Popularity continued to go up, and by 1994 it was one of the most successful programs on television, the talk of the year, and a household name. This show's super high ratings and super popular toy line by Bandai, which included transformable action figures of the Power Rangers and their Megazord, which was the giant mecha that seemed to be a really popular aspect of the show with kids, made the series a lot of money with figures that reached the billions of dollars at the time, according to Saban. Both Power Rangers and Saban were at the top of the fucking world at the time. That's pretty obvious. But that's all commercial stuff. How was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers as a show? Any good? Well, it really depends on who you ask. In spite of technically being an action hero show, it had more of a cheesy 90s sitcom style. It was very episodic with a few sagas that would slightly affect the show here and there to keep kids interested. Now, many like the show for its characters and whatnot, many don't. But it's pretty widely agreed upon that this style isn't what makes people fans. And I think that's pretty evident because compared to a lot of other pop culture phenomena like Transformers or Pokemon, a lot more people grew out of it than became fans. Which is why we're a surprisingly small fandom for a franchise that was once so huge. Nonetheless, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers' success caused the show to get renewed for 2 more seasons. They used the same Zyuranger suits with the exception of the White Ranger from another Sentai replacing the green, but they shot their own original American footage for the fight scenes. And also because of the immense success, Saban Entertainment commissioned 20th Century Fox to make a movie based on Power Rangers. It was quite successful, but marked the end of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers craze as its position as the big thing started to die down. Haim Saban and Saban Entertainment decided that with the series no longer in the same public vein, they would adapt other Sentai besides Zyuranger into Power Rangers. In 1996, they started off with the test run of Ninja Sentai Kaku Ranger being adapted into the side series Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers for 10 episodes. And then the same year, out of Choriki Sentai O-Ranger, we got the sequel to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers titled Power Rangers Zeo. New aesthetics aside, it was basically more Mighty Morphin, with the show following the same characters and carrying over the same vibes. Then that show leads into a movie followed by another show called Power Rangers Turbo. Now here's where we get into a problem. This show absolutely bombs critically and commercially. The show itself showcases probably the worst of the MMPR 90s sitcom style. Now whether or not that was the cause of kids finding it lame is up for debate, but nonetheless it changed the mentality of Saban Entertainment as to what was needed to make Power Rangers cool. The next series, Power Rangers in Space, was posed as the last Power Rangers show. It was going to end the continuous show arc building up since Mighty Morphin Season 1, and it was Saban Entertainment's hopeless attempt at trying something new to make the series successful again. Thankfully, it wasn't such a hopeless attempt, as Rangers in Space brought Power Rangers back into high levels of success, albeit not as high as Mighty Morphin, but still pretty high. The show is also one of the most critically acclaimed Power Rangers series, still being a huge fan favorite to this day. Now this critical and commercial success could definitely be rooted back to what In Space did differently. It mostly did away with the cheesy 90s sitcom style, and instead emphasized on the superhero side of the show being very adventurous and having a lot of story. Now that's not to say that Power Rangers dropped the episodic nature or being cheesy, as those two things will inherently kind of be with Power Rangers forever. But with toning down and new additions to the style, Power Rangers found a great way to execute its concept into a show. Therefore, Power Rangers wouldn't turn back for a while, and this was accepted as a natural evolution. The success of In Space bolstered the series to be continued against all odds. But since In Space already ended the ongoing storyline, Saban Entertainment needed to find a new route to take the next few series. The decision that they came to was to make every single series from then on out have new characters and its own plot, but all be in the same universe with the occasional connection. The next few series were Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, and Power Rangers Time Force. They were all mostly well received, notable by fans for great characters and adventure, and also being surprisingly cinematic compared to the rest of the franchise. And they were also pretty successful, keeping Power Rangers strong and stable. Time Force in particular was so successful that it almost got a movie and caught the eye of the Walt Disney Company. And of course, Disney being Disney decided to make an acquisition. In 2001, for $5.3 billion, Disney acquired Power Rangers and the entirety of Fox Family worldwide from Saban. It was all theirs now. The Saban team wasn't quite done with Power Rangers yet though, as they had one more series still in production, Power Rangers Wild Force. Wild Force made the Saban era end off with one of the strongest and most fondly remembered crossovers in Power Rangers history with Forever Red, a finale fondly remembered by many that is often brought up when talking about the spirit of Power Rangers, and being an adaptation of one of the most toyetic series of Sentai yet. I mean, look at that. Look at how many Zords there are. A lot of people seem to think the other aspects about the series are not super memorable, but hey, Saban, you really rocked towards the end of your time with Power Rangers. I'm sure if the series ever needs you again, we can count on you to make great shows. Right? So Disney at first wanted Power Rangers to end with Wild Force and make money off of reruns and merchandise. But after finding out about how cheap filming in New Zealand as opposed to California was, they decided to keep the series going to expand their television media empire to young boys. Their first shot was Power Rangers Ninja Storm. You could immediately tell that the vibes were way different from the Saban shows. The cinematic vibe died down for a more Surf's Up epic early 2000s vibe. That was both in the way the show was written and the way the show was visually shot. That said, it did retain feeling like an action hero show the way everything since In Space had. From what I'm getting at, it did pretty well, especially in the toys, in spite of only being on ABC Kids for the time being. As for its critical reception though, it's definitely a lot better now. Back then it was probably somewhat well received, but the show did receive some flack for its humor and being too self-contained at the time. But it didn't matter, because the next two series, Power Rangers Dino Thunder and Power Rangers SPD, would go down as some of the biggest fan favorites in the franchise. Dino Thunder was praised for not being self-contained and having great connections to the Power Rangers universe at that, as well as having the same high school setting as Mighty Morphin but with more life to everything about it, and having characters that almost everyone just loves. SPD also did a great job making characters that were super likable and memorable, and adding a big plot which made it contrast well from its Sentai, which was mostly episodic. Success was pretty high as Dino Thunder had the series leap onto the multi-channel Jetix block. The notable channel that it was on that gave Power Rangers the biggest platform was the rising Toon Disney, now known as Disney XD. These two series did well in the States, the toy sales were high, but in Europe they were way more successful. This European success actually ended up being the motive for Disney to continue producing the series for so long, as they were already tired after 2. Now the next season, Power Rangers Mystic Force, in spite of being the most Disney season yet with the magic theme, is our first critical failure that's pretty universal and still lasting to this day in a while. It's important to note that a lot of people that dislike this show seem to feel the effort was there, but it made missteps, particularly with the Red Ranger in his character and overfocus. That all kind of got overshadowed though by the next series, Operation Overdrive, being way bigger of a failure. Most people for the time being saw it as the worst Power Rangers series ever made. Effort was sorta commended, but not really, because most people saw it as way worse than Mystic Force. And it wasn't just critical failure this time. The series was not popular. Its ratings took a pretty big dip from the last season, and its toy sales were poor, partially due to the switch of Bandai America to making original American molds rather than importing the Japanese Sentai toys. This critical and commercial failure was enough to piss off Disney to the point that they wanted to pull the plug on Power Rangers. As I had said, they stopped liking making the series after 2 seasons, but they did have a reason before to keep going with it, whereas now with failures, they didn't. They declared that the next season of Power Rangers was going to be the final one, and from there on out, they would use the franchise for what they were originally going to do in reruns and merchandise. You might think that this was the fall of Power Rangers, but that's actually not true. The next season, Power Rangers Jungle Fury, surprisingly brought toy sales back to a decent level in America and a high level in Europe. Critically, it's one of those situations where it got a lot more beloved as time went on, but even back then, there were at least some people who liked the series, unlike Operation Overdrive and Mystic Force, and that counted for something. Nonetheless, the money was enough for Bandai to be like, please Disney, give us one more season. Disney said alright, but no matter what, it was going to be the last season, no exceptions this time. This next season, Power Rangers RPM, as the grand finale to Power Rangers, was made by the production team to be one to remember. They poured their hearts into making a unique post-apocalyptic setting, characters with a lot of depth, and a story that was pretty serial. RPM was made for the fans, and the fans loved it, with the Disney era ending off on probably the most acclaimed series of Power Rangers. It didn't do great in ratings and sales, but that's probably because Jetix went defunct, and Disney, not caring about the series, placed RPM in a horrible time slot on ABC. Though in Europe it might be a different story. Nonetheless, Disney was done making Power Rangers and started to do what they originally planned to do with the series by airing edited reruns of Mighty Morphin. It was such a sad direction to go in, and it was pretty clear that the franchise was dead. When then out of nowhere, like a gift from God, Saban and his new company Saban Brands bought back Power Rangers for $60 million. Power Rangers was back. Okay, so spoiler alert, this is where the fall of Power Rangers really starts to happen. It'll first happen on a critical basis and then shift over into being on a commercial basis. I'm sure you're surprised, so let me explain. The franchise was going to re-debut with Power Rangers Samurai in 2011. If you remember, the latter half of the Saban era gave us beloved seasons, so having them back for Samurai certainly gave the season some promise. The series was also going to be the first in a crispy HD and on Nickelodeon, which without a doubt was the biggest platform of children's television at the time. So the show also had huge potential for success. So, when it finally aired, that potential was definitely met. This series was extremely successful, and I am actually an eyewitness of that, as this is the series that got me into Power Rangers, and I vividly remember it being the main obsession of everyone in first grade at the time. But in terms of show quality, it did not meet expectations at all. Now, some people like Samurai, so keep in mind that nothing is objective, and there were some aspects of praise that it got, like the Mega Mode suits in the cockpit, but it gets criticized for the majority of people for bringing on an aspect of laziness. In this case, it mostly has to do with it in comparison to its Sentai counterpart. The show on its own felt kind of bland and like it was missing something to a lot of people, and that really gets amplified when looking at Shinkenger. Now, there have been series like Jungle Fury and Time Force that have been similar to their Sentai counterparts, but it was more accepted before Samurai because they would be like alternate takes of their Sentai with new characters and whatnot. Samurai, though, literally just felt like a watered down version of its Sentai. From the characters to the plot twist, they had similar ideas but slightly downgraded to make them less impactful. On top of this, we were also starting to feel Saban's Mighty Morphin nostalgia. There was a way higher level of cheese and bulk added in for basically no reason. And Nickelodeon also started up the very unwelcome trend of super seasons, with the series being split into Samurai and Super Samurai, airing across 2 different years. But hey, they didn't have much time to produce this season after the buyout. I'm sure it could get way better next season. What ended up happening is the polar opposite. The next series, Power Rangers Megaforce, might have gone away from being too similar to its Sentai counterpart, but it bared the laziness and made it 10 times worse, with no life put into its characters, no attention to detail and making sense out of anything in the series, and handling the anniversary stuff on its shoulders for the 20-year celebration horribly. On top of that, it had the Mighty Morphin nostalgia that Saban was feeling take much greater effect, with the series diluting back from the evolutions made in space to the MMPR sitcom style. And the Super Season problem was made even worse as they haphazardly adapted two different Sentai for Megaforce and Super Megaforce. All of this made Megaforce the textbook definition of a kids show that underestimated the intelligence of kids and didn't care about fans. And the consequences were a notable dip in popularity from Samurai, and this season easily being the most hated of all of the Power Rangers seasons by the fanbase. Fortunately, it seemed like Power Rangers was looking to combat this. Power Rangers Dino Charge came next and seemed to fix everything. With interesting characters and character premises, an adventurous vibe coming back, and the likable type of Power Rangers cheese replacing the cringy one, made it feel like Saban once again understood what made Power Rangers great through all of those years. And the few things that people liked about the series recently, like the cockpit modes from Samurai, were brought over to Dino Charge as well. Popularity amongst kids and approval by the fandom rose. So then Dino Charge marks the end of the fall, right? Unfortunately not. Dino Charge is actually still a part of the fall. This is because it was only the start of Dino Charge that was this way. Dino Supercharge greatly affected the reception and popularity of the show. Some people still liked it, but a lot of people felt that the characters downgraded for the worse, and laziness, at least to an extent, was re-embodied, with the finale often being cited as one of the most poorly thrown together moments in Power Rangers. And from what I'm getting at, the toy sales fell in the second half. So in spite of the strong start, Dino Charge was yet another in this dark era. And what is arguably the steepest part of this drop comes next. In 2017, Saban has the series venture into Power Rangers Ninja Steel and the Power Rangers movie. Some people liked the movie and some didn't, yet it actually achieved making Power Rangers the #1 best-selling action figure brand again. That should, in theory, be a big deal for Power Rangers, but it wasn't. Box office earnings did matter quite a bit for this movie, and it didn't come anywhere close to what was expected. And Ninja Steel, which at the end of the day was as important for Power Rangers as the movie, completely bombed in all regards. The toy sales were poor, the ratings dipped below 1 million viewers, which was absolutely horrible, and most people felt this show reached lows that were almost as bad as Megaforce. It was yet another show that was lazy, cringy, didn't care for its fans, and treated kids like idiots. That action figure stat was simply not enough to counter all of this. As such, Bandai gave up merchandising rights of the series and Saban gave up ownership of the series, both going to Hasbro for $500 million. Okay, so whether or not we're still in the fall of Power Rangers is debatable. In terms of the two shows themselves, there's definitely been a change in vibe from the Neo-Saban era. Some people like Beast Morphers and Dino Fury for the Power Rangers lore expansion and great characters, while others hate them for being too bland and relying too much on lore. Ratings went extremely bad, but just like RPM, it was a time slot issue and Nickelodeon is a dying channel anyways. There hasn't been any solid toy sales data from Hasbro, so that area is kinda unclear, but I can't imagine they'd be any good. With Power Rangers Cosmic Fury around the corner, we enter a new horizon. The announcement of the show being a Dino Fury sequel has received a mixed response. We don't know the extent of that or what the season is going for aesthetically, so there's a lot of uncertainty about whether this season will be good or not. It's also the first fully Netflix season, which puts it on a pedestal as the make or break to the popularity of Power Rangers going forward. What will happen to the franchise? We can only hope for the best. I'm Tokyo Rider Go, and I'll see y'all later.